Welcome back, everybody. When I started the show in late May, I did it because I wanted to have the opportunity to speak with people who have done things at the highest levels. It humbles me and it excites me greatly to welcome one of those people. Welcome to the show, William R. Moses.
Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. I hope I can live up to that introduction. Yeah.
Well, you already have just by coming on. You've lived up to everything that I was hoping for. So everything else is bonus on top of this. You've been acting for a long time. You started acting when you were 21 years old. Well, you started acting earlier, but the kind of the Falcon Crest was when you were 21. Yeah, it aired from 81 to 87. I came to the United States in 89, so I kind of missed that part. I came around and I watched Mystic Pizza in reruns at that time. So I missed the beginning of it, but I certainly have followed some of your career since. And I'm very excited to ask questions, kind of going back into your background and finding out more about how your career has been, what things you have learned, and dive in. So let's start with Falcon Crest. It seems like that it wasn't your first gig because you had a movie before, but that was your kind of a big break, and it started fairly early in your career. How was it as a young actor to be on that type of set for that long of a show?
Well, I mean, the old saying is youth is wasted on the young. I don't think in hindsight, that kind of that era in television is an era that's no longer here. I mean, in those days, there were 3 television networks, and Falcon Crest on a Friday night averaged a 37 share. SharePoint was higher than it is now.
Yeah.
So a 37 share translated to 40 million viewers.
Yeah.
A SharePoint in those days was 1.2 million. A SharePoint now is 900,000. A 12 share is a hit now. So on network television. So, coming that early to it, I got my Screen Actors Guild card in 1979, working on a Sprite commercial. I was going to USC at the time, and strangely, the girl in the Sprite commercial was Jamie Rose, who later played my sister on Falcon Crest. That was my first job ever. I was 19 years old. I got the pilot to Falcon Crest about, I think, like a month before my 21st birthday, and we started shooting the pilot before my 21st birthday in Napa. I had done one movie before that. I was going to USC, and I was working on this little movie called Choices, and Demi Moore played my sister in that movie. And so I was really sort of an athlete who was a pretty good high school athlete. I was going back east to school, and all of a sudden sort of realized that I was going down a road that was going to make a lot of people happy, like my father, my stepfather, my grandfather, my uncle, but I hadn't accounted for my own happiness in that, and took some time off, worked as a carpenter, and then started into commercials, fell into doing commercials, and then went back to school so my parents would pay my rent. My stepfather, who was very influential in my life, didn't want me to act, thought it was he like a lot of people, he thought it was we used to go to Samuel French bookstore, the theatrical bookshop here in Los Angeles when it was open, and they used to sell these hats, no dogs or actors allowed, which was the way it was for vaudevillians in New York at the turn of the century, turn of the 20th century. So there was sort of a great number of people look askance at actors and the profession of acting, and even to this day that happens. So I went to school and used money that I made doing commercials. In like 2.5 years, I did like 18 commercials. I used that money to go to professional acting classes in town after school in the evenings, and then I'd go to school very early, take all the earliest morning classes so I could go to auditions in the afternoon. And as it turned out, after about 1.5 years of that, I got Choices. Silvio Narazano directed it, who was a European director who was nominated for Georgie Girl. Opposite was the movie that made Lynn Redgrave. So I got to work with a really great director first, my first thing. Finished that movie, and concurrently, as I was finishing this movie, I got a chance to read for this pilot, and the pilot was at that time called The Vintage Years. And it was written by Earl Hamner, the same man that created the Waltons, who at that time was,
Yeah.
you know, the Waltons was a long time the #1 show in America, and Earl Hamner was a big deal in at that time, and Earl took a liking to me, and you know, bang, 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 and all of a sudden I'm now, you know, first working on a network pilot, which was recast, and then the pilot got picked up. They reshot the pilot with Susan Sullivan and Robert Foxworth, and you know, something began, you know, and you think at that age that it's, you know, always going to be like this. And you know, I can tell you all these years later that nothing has been anything like it. You know, and it was a wonderful learning experience, you know, to be able to, at such a young age, to be around such seasoned professional actors, and to be around Jane Wyman, who was extraordinarily strict with me and with all the young actors. That, you know, you're young and you're stupid and you know nothing, which I hated that she thought that, but she, you know, all these years later, you know, she was right. You know, I was young and knew nothing, and didn't know enough, didn't even know enough to know what I didn't know, which is maybe why I was fearless enough to try to do it in the first place, you know. So it was, you know, it was a wonderful experience, great learning experience, you know, that you are in the big leagues. There's a lot of money at stake, a lot of viewers at stake. It's a big time in broadcast television, you know, and there are some really wonderful parts of it. It's also, that's a tough business, you know, there's some business sides of it that all these years later, you know, I think I have a better perspective on, you know, but yeah, it was a great way to start. Very grateful to be around Susan and Bob and David Selby, who I'm still friends with to this day. And Jane Wyman was quite tough on me when I did the show, but later in my career had seen some of the things that I had done, and would seek me out to tell me how proud she was of me, which was really, that was quite rewarding. So it was neat. It was neat.
Back to it, and again, this is fascinating. When Jane was tough on you, what were some of the lessons that you took that stayed with you for the rest of your career?
Well, that served me now. I mean, you know, was always be on time.
Yeah.
Always be polite to the crew. Always know your lines. Always do your homework. Always be prepared.
Yeah.
That the actor's job isn't easy, but the crew is there twice as long every day and works twice as hard because their hours are much longer. And that if you can earn the respect of the crew, you are deserving of that respect, because these are very hardworking people, and who have seen it all and done it all, and are working 12 to 15 hours a day, 5 days a week. You know, they're working 90-hour weeks often. So, you know, to win their respect as a professional, that was a good thing. And Jane had that down. She was not in those days, you know, that production company, you know, Lorimar, which was that's its own story, but their policy as a company was that there were no motorhomes for the actors. All the actors got the same size dressing room. So at Warner Brothers, when we started, they had these, like, they looked like doll houses on casters that they would weave, and they had a bed and an air conditioner in them, and a closet to hang your stuff in, a mirror, and that was it. But I had the same size thing as Jane Wyman, and when we'd go on location, it was honey wagons, you know, and these honey wagons are, you know, 12 by 6, you know, and you know, with a bathroom in there, and that's it, and a bed, and everybody got the same. Jane never once complained, never once, you know, was always there, always on time, always prepared, in every circumstance, no matter what. She just had an impeccable work ethic, and the acting, I don't know. What I learned from Jane most of all was the work ethic, and the way that the crew responded to her work ethic. She was respected because of that, more than anything else. And that was a great lesson. I mean, that was a great lesson, and it helps me now. When being an actor and working on a movie set now, it's different during the pandemic. But
Yeah.
it requires a lot of people in concentrated spaces.
Yeah.
From a lot of different backgrounds, and there are several departments and several people in each department, and dedicated to the purpose. And the actor, it's a synergistic medium. You need things to come together. The actor can only be as good as the people around him. It starts with good writing, but then you need the makeup artist not to to do a nice job so you can look okay. Just because it's people that's the nature of the business. People, television in particular, it's your visage is an important part of your instrument, so you want that to be taken care of, without being overvain. But you want to look the best you can. You want to be at your best, right? So you have your makeup, you have your wardrobe, you have the sound department that has to wire you, everybody's in close proximity to you, and a lot of people concentrated. I just worked on How to Get Away with Murder, and there's 60 and 70 people are coming to work every day to put that together. And you have to interface with, all the ADs, all the directors, all the writers in the story meetings, the wardrobe, the hair, all of it, and to work with them well, which means a level of professionalism, and it's just really it's essential. It's essential because with their help, with all those people coming together, an actor can be good, right? You need all of those things to help you to do your best work, and that was a great teaching. It's different than she wasn't somebody that I think Jane. It's an older. We never really talked much about acting per se, Jane and I. One, because I worked on the other side of the family, I didn't work with her much. The person that I did spend time talking to in particular was David Selby. A young actor, took interest because I was going to acting workshops outside of doing the series, because I knew that I was really quite inexperienced and that I needed more education, and I knew that somehow. Bob Foxworth was really good to me in terms of he had gone to Carnegie Mellon, and he had me work with some people privately that taught Alexander technique and vocal technique, because my voice would get all up in here and under tension, and I wouldn't have the voice that I needed. And I learned that at a young age. I learned that kind of stuff and worked with that at a young age, because the older actors had said this might be a good idea for you. Those were all part of it. Those were the good ones, the really great experiences. They were the ones that I did. Susan Sullivan every once in a while would pull me aside and say, well, did you notice what happened, in the scene that you just did? And I go, well, no. Well, did you notice that the actor you worked with wasn't as good in the close-up as he was in the wide shot? I went, yeah. And he goes, well, make sure you know that the close-up is where the money is. That's the money, right? So a little kind of seasoned veteran things that were imparted to a young actor. That was very valuable.
And I'm making an educated guess, but I think the part of you that knew that you needed to go outside and continue working on the craft is the athlete part of you. You were used to putting up shots. You're a basketball player, so you were used to that type of work ethic and knowing how to get better at something. So maybe that had something to do with it.
That's probably accurate, and I think that's probably accurate. I mean, but that's that stays with me even now. I mean, I'm still in fact, more now than ever, which is the thing that I've learned along the way, and one of the things that became fascinating to me and is even more fascinating. This is one of the only professions in the whole world, which is I really have a shot at being better at acting at 82 than I was at 22. And there's no profession that you can say that about. I mean, that I can think of. I mean, there isn't. I mean, and it's really true in terms of the taking written material, the interpretation of written material, and resonating, having a personalizing it and having it resonate with an audience. It really is possible with age and to be better at it. What you can do with a look that you needed a speech to do before. I mean, it's just, the paradoxes of the craft. I mean,
And that's the part I love. And when I named the show "The Love of Acting," that's really where it comes from. It's that ability to understand it, to get into the intricacies, to really get into the character and find the right path so you can be grounded in it. All these things are fascinating to me. When I was watching Bridge of Spies and I saw Mark on the screen, almost immediately I said, if he doesn't win an Oscar for this, I don't know acting. It's that I was as excited about just watching him as I was about the whole movie. That's the part that's fascinating for me.
Yeah, no, I think that for me, I mean, there are when acting is at its best for me, which is give me more of that, which is I had this experience, I can remember in the third grade, on the blacktop playground playing touch football and coming back to throw the pass, and I saw the guy hold his hands like that.
Yeah.
And I threw the ball, and then everything froze. Everything went in slow motion, and the ball was a perfectly tight spiral. And I could hear the gym coach from behind me to this day, good pass. And the ball went in a perfectly tight spiral right into his hands like that. So it was at full speed, but it went slow motion because the concentration was so pure. You don't get that all the time with acting, but when you do, when you're in the scene, you're in it, and you're so in it that it's like a church on the soundstage, and all eyes are on you, and you're in the scene, but you're also up here knowing that all eyes are on you, and everything is like so concentrated that it's now moving in slow motion. It's that is that you're sort of ever present in a way. The concentration and your awareness is so heightened because your concentration is so focused, and so that feeling is, I mean, that's the thing, because the business is hard. The business of acting is really hard and really difficult, not very nice, but that makes it all worth it. And you don't always get it, and by no means do you always get it, but when you do get it, you go, that's why I'm doing this. I mean, you know in that moment that's the thing, and that's like the Man of La Mancha. It's the quest, right?
It's the purity of it. It's fascinating. There's no way to describe it. You just have to kind of feel it, and once you feel it, once you want it all the time. And thankfully, and I guess conversely, we have a lot of takes. So you may feel completely pure in one take, and then you have to do another one, and it's gone. And what?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, I mean, you start to learn that.
Yeah.
Film acting is different than theater acting, and in film acting, it's all, because it's so immediate. You get the material, you get a call sheet, you show up on the set when it's time to shoot it, and within, if it's a 3-page scene or a 2-page scene, in that hour and a half, it's all going to be over and never going to be there again. It's not like the theater, the next night you're going to go out and you can rework that moment, or you're experiencing that moment in front of it's happening then and now. And so the process of working on film has its own sort of you start to understand that and have a way that you work with that, and what's that. It's all sort of I forgot who there was a book I read, that it's all rehearsal basically, and then it starts focusing and in the rehearsal, it starts to become, more organic, and each shot, for the wider shots, you need different things. You need the physical part of it. You want your body to be working, but the nuance of it happens in the medium and the close-ups,
I read that you may be referring to the same book that I read that has that. It's a book by Michael Caine, Acting on Film. So he was breaking it down in the same way that you're mentioning.
The one I'm talking about, and I can't. It's a different book that I'm talking about, and I can't. I probably have it in my bookshelf back there. I'll have to, but I'm not coming up with the title right now. But yeah.
If you find it, we'll link it below so people can check it out. I want to buy it because I want to read up on it. Let's go to films, because you did your five seasons on Falcon Crest. I also find it, as a side note, I find it interesting that you have 140 episodes that you did there, and you also have 140 total credits on your IMDb. I just find that fascinating. So you did that, and then you left, and one of the things that you've done shortly after was Mystic Pizza.
Yes.
How was that kind of going from a TV series to a film? And you're working with a lot of very young actors on Mystic Pizza, as opposed to working with all sorts of actors, including Jane, who is certainly older at Falcon.
Well, all those young actors are now seasoned veteran actors, and incredible actors. Julia among them, and Lily Taylor, and Vincent D'Onofrio. I mean, wow. Annabeth has done really well too. I mean, amazing, amazing people. Mystic Pizza is like, it's one of the love letters of my career, which was that, just in terms of, it had come at a really good time. It was such a joy. It was in a part of the world that I love, a part of the world that I'd spent some time in, because before I went to USC, I went to school in Connecticut for a year, and it just was an Alfred Uhry did the polish on the man who wrote Driving Miss Daisy, and did the polish on the script in particular. He did the polish on my character. The being involved in that was such a Valentine, such a neat experience, it was just from start to finish. It's, if everything could be like that, geez, that was just a joy. Every part of it was a joy. It was just a really good experience and a really great experience. And, I'd like to do 10 more of those before I hang them up. If I could.
It's interesting, and you've mentioned that you've had an opportunity at a very young age as an actor to be in this incredible production on TV. Then you went and you did Mystic Pizza, which was amazing, and then you had a period of time. As I was kind of doing my prep for it, I saw that yes, you've done Perry Mason, and you've done a lot of kind of TV movies. You've done a lot of guest star roles. You've had some recurrings as well thrown in there, but it seems like, this is what I was wondering about, is it when you were you looking for something specific, another series to kind of get into, or was this taking time more for the family, or just that's how the business was?
There were a couple things, which is that I got married. We started Mystic Pizza in September of '87, and I had gotten married in June of '87. And 2 weeks after I got back from Mystic Pizza, my then wife was diagnosed with cancer. We were married less than 6 months, and she came down with stage 3 Hodgkin's, or stage 2 Hodgkin's. And concurrent with that, there was a strike, an actor strike that lasted for a long time. So between her having cancer and having gone through in those days, Hodgkin's is more treatable. They have better treatments now. They do different treatments. In those days, it was curable, but the treatments were hard. I mean, very, very hard. And to be 27 years old, knowing that my new bride could die, was having to face this kind of battle, was one thing. With a strike on top of it was another. And when it finished, Mystic Pizza, I think it was just coming out. It was just coming out. And I hadn't worked for 6 or 7 months because of life and because of the strike. And and I got this opportunity to do these TV movies, these Perry Mason movies. And I came and did one, and then they, you know, I think I made about 25 of those movies, but I did that. I worked on that job for like 6 years, you know what I mean? So I worked with Raymond Burr for 6 years on that job. And it was, you know, I don't think I've ever had more fun on a job than doing those movies, you know what I mean, in terms of, you know, we shot in Colorado, and, you know, Raymond would be in the office, you know, doing Perry Mason things, and I'd get a clue and chase a bad guy around, and then show up in the courtroom, you know, with a black eye and a clue that he would look brilliant with, right? And so that was the formula. But it meant that I would work. I have, you know, they'd take 25 days to shoot the movies, and I'd have 10 days where I was just off in Colorado, and I'd go ski or do whatever. So it was really a lot of fun. But you know, with all due respect to the medium, I mean, and we're very successful movies, but it, you know, had there not been a strike, had there not been my wife not been sick, would I have, in hindsight, have waited to see what might have developed that were more actor oriented? Yeah, maybe. I think that's probably accurate, but I did what I did, and you know, it was you know, it was a good job and a good money job. I don't know that it was I don't know that it was the best thing in the world for my acting. You know what I mean? Just in terms of, but you know, even during that period, I was studying too. Then I started studying with, I was studying then, but I think had I been more available to have other things, I think you know, maybe things would have been, maybe made a different turn. You don't know. I mean, hindsight is, you don't know. But it was during that period that I started working with Kim Stanley, and which was a legendary figure in the development of the method, and through the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg, and having that experience with her was very valuable and very enlightening. I never, you know, in my 20s, in my early 20s and later, up until my early 30s, I worked with her. I didn't know what the heck she was talking about half the time. Now, I mean, just she was confusing to me, you know. I mean, and she had this apartment on Hillcrest in Hollywood, and you'd do these scenes, and you know, and then she had this ante room where you'd go and talk to her privately, and she had such a, you know, I mean, you know, Kim has what you can't teach. She was brilliant, and with that, she had brilliant insight and vision. She could actually like see through you, you know, right down into your soul, and so a lot of it was elliptical, and it was confusing at the time. Now, some 30 years later, you know, I guess I'm a slow learner. It's starting to make some sense, you know. Just, you know, she would say, you know, well, you're planning everything, and it would be like, well, yeah. I mean, there's a script. You analyze the script. The scene has a certain vibe, beginning, middle, and end. Yes, of course I'm planning. Do you know? No. I was like, what? Moment to moment. In the circumstance, go moment to moment. I go, well, why would you do that? She goes, because if you go moment to moment, it'll take you someplace you never knew you could go. Yeah. So that was pretty phenomenal. I mean, you know, and now that I'm thinking back on it, I think I started working with Kim Stanley right at the time of Mystic Pizza.
Hmm.
right then. I mean, right just before Mystic Pizza and through that. And her note on Mystic Pizza was, "Why did they make you wear those glasses?" It was like, I said, "Well, that's the character, the director." But she's, "Wow, it was such a cop out." It was like, "Yeah, but
Yeah.
they wanted me to do it, you know." So okay, but that was her thing, and so she was. So you know, everybody has their own path and their different twists and turns, and life comes along the way. And this is, you know, it's alternately an art form and also a profession. So you know, there are times when you take jobs because you need the job or because you want to make a living, and you know, which are all valid reasons, you know. But you're balancing it all out, you know. I think, yeah, no, we'll see. I mean, so that was,
Yeah, it makes sense, and that's the real part, and that's why it's important to have people like yourselves being on the show. Is for those up and coming actors, they need to realize that, hey, just because you've been in such and such does not mean a linear progression anywhere else. That just it doesn't happen. It's different things, and you've guest starred everywhere.
yes,
You
yes, I
yeah,
have.
you've been on everything that I've seen, and that I've probably won't have enough time to watch, even if I wanted to. Um, and it's interesting, kind of these stops along the way. Melrose Place, you've done. You've done The Secret Life of the American Teenager. You've done these projects, and then you continue kind of doing films, and you continue doing guest stars, and bring this up to now, where you're working on How to Get Away with Murder, Shonda Rhimes' project. I just think, looking back, it's an interesting, to see. I started out in Falcon Crest, and this is a big, television network show, and now I'm in a big network television show, and how different they are. I think that must just be an interesting thing to look at.
Well, you know, yes, I mean, one happily, you know, the 80s television was, it was in many ways the golden age of television because the audiences were so huge. There were three networks, and the audiences were so huge. But in those days there was still a lot of carryover from the old lighting techniques. I mean, when I first started on Falcon Crest, I used this oil-based makeup, and I'm fair, so I mean, and they would put this makeup on, and it was like, I'd come out of the makeup trailer and I'd be orange, I mean, literally look like a pumpkin with blonde hair. I mean, it
Wow.
was orange. But when you go on the sets, and the older actresses love it, they would bang in hard light, like, I mean, you used to have 9 lights, and they had 3 banks of tungstens. They go more, and when Jane was there, they put a net on it, and they turn on everything, and would take 20 years off of her face. But for me, it was like, oh, stop squinting. So,
Wow.
you know, and that was a stylized genre. You mean the genre of nighttime soap operas? I don't think it holds up really great 40
Yeah.
years later, in terms of, like you see The Godfather, it's as good today as it was, I mean, it's timeless, right?
Yep.
I don't think 80s soap operas hold up the same way. Now, jumping forward to working on a network television show, it's more diverse, there's more women, there's more people of color, there's Shonda's value system is color and women, and LGBTQ,
Yep.
all of that is it's part of this polyglot, which made it, from my point of view, truly exciting to
Mhm.
work on, because it's such vibrant and diverse energies, and with a vibrant and diverse crew. And yes, what Jane taught me all these 40 years later was, did it all come in handy? Yes, it comes in, in spades, because it's like, these are my colleagues, and you earn your respect by doing your work, and doing your work well, and then
Yeah.
being a professional while you do it. And that's yes, yes, Jane's teaching 40 years of that having been drummed. Yeah, I'm a slow learner, but it's getting into my head, it's starting to work. If I had a regret, it's that I only got to work with her one time and one scene. Strangely, I worked in the scene with Tim Hutton and Viola Davis, 2 Oscar winners, and my very first audition when I stopped was transitioning from doing commercials into acting work was with Robert Redford to play Tim Hutton's best friend in Ordinary People. I hadn't seen him since then, and he didn't remember me, but I reminded him that we met, and that's where we met. But yeah, I would have liked to have had. I was the person chasing Viola and chasing her character, and I was like, is he going to get her? Is he going to get her? And then this story in the finale took a left turn, where Agent Lanford was foiled again, and she got away, and then they did this flash forward. So I would have liked to have worked with her more. Getting to know her was, and to talk to her. She's great. I mean, she's great. I mean, just what a neat woman. I mean, what an unbelievable talent, and she's a wonderful human being. I can't say enough nice about her. She's just great. It was really a pleasure to be on her show and be around her. It was nothing but it's a wonderful experience, And all of them, Pete Nowak was great, and the young cast that I got to work with, Jack was great, and it was just a really good experience all the way through.
Yeah, and there is, to Shonda's shows, there is a rhythm, there is a tension and a way that things are done. It's just I'm from the Scandal days where I got used to literally having kind of a PTSD moment just by watching the shows, because you knew something was about to happen. And I noticed myself while I was driving, I noticed myself looking over because I'm expecting a car to hit me on the side. And that's when I said, okay, I need to come down a little bit and stop watching as much as I'm watching, because this is not affecting me in a positive mental way. But I love that energy and the vitality of her program.
Yeah, no, that was a first-rate operation, and it was a pleasure. What might be good for, because actors talking about acting and the craft of acting, I mean, I ended up doing 15 shows, but I came as a one-day guest star.
Wow. Okay.
I came to that show as a one-day guest star, and when they wanted me, they said it's one day, and we said, well, it was in the breakdowns as a guest star, and they go, well, it's a one-day guest star.
Okay.
And some of my people came. I said, well, that's not what you do. And I said, yeah, but there's a lot of work here, and the scenes are good, So, and I've never worked for Shonda, so I think I should do it. So let's do it, because I think I can be good in this part. And anyway, I did, and then they had me back for 3 more that year, and then they offered me a deal in the second season. And yes, I had to audition for it. So no, but it's good for people to know, which is that one of the producers I worked with, said there are no small parts, only small actors. Right. This proved to be the case. I mean, because it wasn't about billing or spot or payment at first. It was just like, what? I like these scenes. I think I think I have a take on this that I think I can be effective with. And so yes, you have to gamble to go in, because then because they say, well, you shouldn't even go in for it. It's like, well, let's roll the dice. So anyway, that's a good piece of information. Maybe that's useful to somebody.
Yeah, it certainly is, because you are on NCIS. I think you were a recurring guest star, so you might have continued being on NCIS, but you decided to kind of try this out, and that it went into 15 episodes.
I had done I had done JAG years ago, one of the later seasons, and it was a show that I don't know. I think David James Elliott would. I think there were some shows where they gave him some time off, and I did one of the shows as a pretty major guest star, and playing a submarine commander, and it went well. It was a good show. I liked how it turned out. It holds up pretty well. So when they started NCIS, they offered me like the third show that was ever produced on the show. And I came and did it. And in those days, the show was just starting off, and it was like, I went to wardrobe and I said, well, what am I playing? And it's like, well, you're playing an FBI agent. I said, well, can I have the script? They said, well, there is no script, but here's a suit. Try this suit on. And it was like, okay. And then I would go, 9 o'clock at night. No, I got no lines. And then they, 11, some lines would come, and I was like up late to get there early. And I go, okay, that's kind of late to get these lines. Well, forget those lines. We're going to do these lines. And, and so it was, so we did the show, and all I can remember about doing that show very early, and it was one, Mark, I've known Mark since I'm 12 years old. So it was good to be with Mark, and who I'm very fond of. But I don't remember much else about it other than we never had the lines, and it was like we would get something and then shoot it, and it was like, well, this is all fake. I had read for a lot of these NCIS, because the NCIS is a show that reads. They do you read for every one of them. You read, and it's like, and then they it used to be you read and then you get it. Now they put a pin in you, and then they give you or they ask avails, and then they put a pin in you, and then they, there's a whole process now. It's like a vetting process. And I think over the years, I've probably been pinned like 8 times and never got the job. And it was a week I had off. Actually, I didn't even have the week off. And I said, well, I'm not going to read. I don't want to drive down and read for this thing, because they never hire me, and and I'm working, and they go, come on, and so I went, and lo and behold, this one I got. So, and it was great to see Mark, and it was funny because I probably did that JAG in, it must have been 91, 92.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the same makeup artist that worked on me, that makeup artist went to NCIS, which is now run for 7 years.
Yeah.
So from 25 years earlier, I'm saying, it's good to see you again. It's like, wow. They're shooting on the same sound stage, and like many of the crew was like, good to see you again. It's like, wow, it's very unusual that all in that Don Belisario world. I mean, that has, talk about having legs, and so yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Very interesting. So and you kind of brought this up, but it's great to know for us, not necessarily great for you, but you still have to audition for things. I get
offers, but I have to audition. Yeah, that's everybody. If you want to get the good one, and the good ones you definitely have to audition for, but yeah, you have to audition. I mean, it's you have to audition. I mean, and that's pretty usual, pretty standard stuff. I mean, that happens. I mean, I do get offers, but the network shows. I mean, you can't even audition unless you're on a list now.
That's true. But when you're auditioning, are you? I mean, do you still keep a resume and a headshot, or I think at this point they know who you are?
They have my representation set. I'm pitched, and they say yes, no, and and I'm approvable to audition, but I got to go audition. And and the relationship to auditioning is. I mean, that's a tricky one for actors, because it's a tricky thing. You have to get, for the majority of actors and actors like me, you know, I mean, for me to get good roles, I have to audition for them. And there's a lot of different schools of, you know, what is the best way to audition and what is the,
Right.
you know, there's a lot of different schools, and I don't pretend to know, other than, because sometimes you go like, I killed it, I knocked it out of the park, and you don't get it, and sometimes you go, it wasn't very good, but they wanted me, you know, which is, you know, kind of how I felt about the last time I did an NCIS. It was like, well, I didn't think the audition was that, but they wanted me, so okay, we went and did it, and they were all happy, and it was great. But it was like, but what about all the auditions that I knew I killed in there? I mean, so there's so many things that go into casting, you know, and there's so many things that go into it, and usually, you know, when I see roles that I didn't get, most times I understand. I mean, you know, meaning that, well, if they wanted him, they didn't want me, because one, we're so different.
Right.
Usually it's because they go a different way, or they go younger, or they go, or in casting now, because of, you know, social media has, there's an interrelationship with social media, because, and I don't do any social media, I do none. I have a LinkedIn account, that's about it, and I don't even really know how to work it. But I don't do Facebook, I don't do Instagram, I do none of it. And that's probably not wise, but, you know, at this stage of my life, for me to start and I have 3 followers, and that's probably, you know, that'd probably be detrimental, I would think, you know. And also I had some nuts that were circling for many years, so so that's the reason why I didn't do that. But you know, so you know, auditioning for actors is, you know, I think it's better for every actor to assume, for me to get the roles I really want, I'm going to have to read for them. And it doesn't matter what level you're at, because there's, wherever you are, there's a place you want to go that's higher. And to get to that higher place, you have to probably do it in a room in front of people. And you have to be right. You have to be able to handle it. And you know, what they're looking for in audition, you know, I try to get as close as I can to something that I could shoot, you know, that day. But having said that, I always keep the pages in my hand, so that, or even if now you do a lot more auditioning, like on film, you know, where you self-tape, which I love, because I feel like my training is mostly in front of the camera. I've done theater, and I've had some success at theater. I'm not a huge established theater actor, but I've done it. But I do know a lot about working in front of a camera, because I've done a lot of it. So when I audition for self-tapes, I make sure that in the bottom of the frame, you can see, like, if my hand was the pages, you can see that the pages are in my hand.
Yeah.
You know, and just so that they know that there's still more room, that there's more in the tank, right? Even if you're giving it all out, you just have it because they go, oh God, it's still really not up. You know, so you're giving them the idea that I've got room to go less, more, different, you know. And then the rest of it is, you know, working in the room for me is different than being in a room with people, and sometimes it's necessary to be in the room with people, and sometimes you can just do it off a tape. Off a tape is a little better for me, because I, you know, love it or hate it, you know, I did it, and had some say over it, you know. So in the room, you know, sometimes talking is good. You know, sometimes you're kind of right, and they just need to hear you talk a little bit, and that helps, you know. And sometimes the talking talks you out of the part. So I don't know. I mean, it's mysterious, and I've never read a quintessential book on auditioning. And my relationship, it's taken me a long time to get to the point where, well, if I want something good to happen, the likelihood is I'm going to have to read for it.
Yeah.
You know.
if you want a book, Michael Kostroff, who was my first guest on the show, I love you, Michael. He wrote a book on auditioning. I found it useful. I don't know if it would be useful for you, but yeah, I'll link it in case you want to check it out.
Please send it to me.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like you're mentioning self tapes, and with the self tapes, I do a lot of them because that's how we submit mostly. Even before COVID started, I think mostly it's through self tape. And what I find missing with the self tape is that I want to have, I want to see the eyes of the person. I want to be able to interact and then kind of feed off of their reactions. I'm a bit Meisner in this way. And on self-tape, I imagine things, and my imagination is pretty good, but that's the part that I'm missing. So I actually like being in the room because there is a reader and there's somebody that I can interact with. That's why.
My self-tape, I have one actor friend in particular that I usually bring with me, and
that's good.
And I have a studio in town that I can do it at a reasonable price, and I prefer, because he's working with better, rather than my iPhone. I mean, or my computer. I just feel like I'm getting a better quality product. I rent the space for half an hour. I meet with him. I do my work. I meet with him 20 minutes before, and we go over it 2 or 3 times. And once I feel like I'm kind of ready, we don't go over it. We sit down and we pump it out, and we'll do 2 or 3 takes. And once we get one we like, we'll do one just like, Judy Dench in Inside the Actors Studio said, she was talking about that when she builds a character, she adds to it, and then she strips it down. So once I get one I like, then I go, okay, well, I'm going to do nothing now, and then when I do nothing, some of the work is still there, and usually leaner, especially as you're older, because you have a certain weight and you have a certain gravitas anyway. Usually that's the one I go with, not always, but usually. So that's a process that I've liked as a self-tape, and find an actor friend, because it is a community thing. We don't act in a bubble. That will do this with you, and you trade services, and that's a good way of handling that. I've had some success with that. That works well for me. And then also the guy that I work with out here, has a background in casting, and so he's not bad either. But I prefer to have my own. I prefer to have him operating the camera, and my actor friend, who we have a long, we have a long history together. So so that it's also good, because you can go, what are you doing? Because sometimes, when you have to have those moments. You can only be as good as you're willing to be bad. So that's you have to, and working with someone that's willing to say, what, that's ridiculous. And for it to be okay, for it to be okay to make those mistakes in front of people. So those are, that's good stuff to have.
Yeah. You've mentioned a few, nutsos and crazies. I actually wanted to ask you about the fame element of it. What being thrust into fame at an early age and kind of having been in the public eye for so long, what are some of the positives of it and drawbacks that you've experienced?
Well, I mean, celebrity is, everybody's a little different. I mean, it's nice to be noticed. I mean, the people that, that know me are either, a lot of them are people that watch, particularly, the ones that are most avid people watch a lot of Lifetime movies. The people have seen me, and that people are really devoted to those. And so there's some people that are really crazy about those, and I've done a lot of those. Because for a long period in my life, when the TV movie was a big thing, that was my bread and butter. I probably made 50 TV movies. So and a lot of those people still recognize me in these long forms, especially when for a period there I played a lot of nuts. And then the Falcon Crest stuff was a long time ago. For me, even then, I was always And I think that if you were to talk to like David Selby and some of the other people, you know, celebrity was not really something that has ever been that interesting to me. Being a good actor had interested me a lot. And if people know me vis-a-vis something they've seen me in and like me in, that's wonderful. That's great. But celebrity as we know it in this day and age is not something, you know, celebrity now is you're a celebrity, you're famous for being famous, not because of something you've done. You know, having people recognize your work or having been drawn to something you do, that's very exciting, and you try to be as gracious as you can. And to be, you know, because just to be gracious because somebody's extending, it takes, you know, people, you know, I'm sort of a shy person, you know, I can speak in front of people, but if you leave me on my own and you put me in front of 100 people, I don't have a problem speaking, but if you leave me on my own at a dinner party, I kind of go in the corner, and then it's like, I'm not like, you know, like, hey, I'm just not one of those guys. That's never been, that's probably, and that's kind of common, I think, with actors that I've talked to. There's often people are drawn to acting because they're shy. And strangely, a lot of people from whose families come from military backgrounds, I've noticed a lot of that too. But no, I don't really have any great insights into fame. It's been a long time since I've been famous. You know, I'm sort of known, and to some people and to women of a certain age, you know, that women that, you know, it's not like you know, it's, in my 20s, they were probably, you know, there was probably more temptations. These days, they're more like, you know, the women that know me are, you know, sort of, you know, they're older, you know, so I try to be polite and courteous, and, you know, that's it. But no, I don't have any great insights into fame.
Okay. And in terms of a few more questions, by the way, and I know I've taken a lot of your time already, which I'm grateful for. Staying in shape, because acting is a grueling process. It's physically, emotionally, psychologically grueling. And you know, you being an athlete, have you continued? You know, I know you're in great shape now. I see you on screen, but have you continued kind of making that a part of your regimen, and have you found that that's something that helps you with your acting?
Well, just to general health, you know, I mean, like I'm, you know, right after we're finished here, I'm going to play tennis actually. So, you know, I have a group of guys I play tennis with. I have a dog. I exercise every day, and I go through periods where, you know, my hobby is cooking. So that there are periods where I get a little thicker, and there are periods where I go, well, that's too much of that. And then I get disciplined and watch what I eat and exercise more. So, you know, you try to be aware of, you know, the medium, you know, you want to be watchable. So you want to try to look your best, you know, so whatever that means, without, you know, trying to be too vain about it, but you want to try to, you know, not be, you know, obviously if you eat, you know, salami and smoke cigarettes all day long, you know, you're probably not going to look so great. So, I mean, you know, you try to take good care of yourself. You know, I have children, so so, you know, I want to be around for them. And so, yeah, taking care of yourself is part of it. And that, you know, in terms of the, you know, film acting is long hours, you know, but I've done it for so many years now that you know, I'm pretty battle hardened, you know, I mean, even if I step away from it, you know, right now during this pandemic, it's been a while because for everybody. But when I have to go back and work 12 hours a day, will I be ready to do it? Yeah, I'll be ready to. Probably take a nap at lunch, but other than that, I'll be ready. And I find years ago when in my late 20s, I used to like to work long hours because the longer that I would work, I just didn't have the energy to be nervous. You know, and I have found at periods in my career where stage fright comes in and goes out. It hasn't been like I got over it and never came back. It's sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. I do live theater, man. The first few nights, wow. I don't know how I ever get through it, but I manage. You know, so I used to like that, I used to like the feeling like 10 hours in where it's like, okay, just give me a scene to do, because I don't have any nervous energy left, so I'll just do the scene. I think I can settle in better now. I work hard. I'm more conscious of trying a relaxation of breath. And when I worked with Larry Moss, he talked a lot about that, in the preparation, how and Kim Stanley talked a lot about it, but hers was more the getting into emotional circumstance. Larry was more comprehensive about having your body be free of tension, so that, you can, it just being relaxed, but having a volcano of emotion at the same time, trying to get that dichotomy, happening, so that you're filled, but your body is relaxed, and that you're not, tension, particularly when the camera comes in really tight, everything is so pronounced, blink less, stay with your person, really look them in the eye, really focus on them, let the camera look into you, make sure, have your thought connected to the character. Although, there are some interesting dichotomies, I worked with Harris Yulin, a fabulous stage actor. We did this movie in Texas, and just a scene in a bar, and sitting there playing a rodeo cowboy, just kind of sitting there, but he had to wear a suit that night, so he's kind of uncomfortable at this art exhibit. And we're just standing at the bar. That's the scene. And they go, cut, and they go, and Harris said, no, wait a second. I got an idea. And they go, okay. And so they roll the camera, and I'm just sitting there with my glass of booze and rolling, and Harris just looking at me. And he goes, what you got there? Whiskey? God, that was great. It was like when we finished, it was like, why was that great? What did we do? Why was that so great? And he goes, it doesn't matter what we did. The audience endowed it. They filled it in.
Yep.
That was interesting. I mean, that it's interesting because sometimes, that if you can suck them in, nothing sometimes becomes fascinating, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't, maybe that's an inane story, I don't know, but it was certainly powerful when we did it, and that the audience does endow things that if you're connected, the audience will endow things, and some things will be things you intended, and some things will be just because they did, so.
No, it's not, it's a very good thing to share, because again, especially on screen and especially in close-ups, doing less is more, or almost doing nothing is even better. As long as there is a thought behind it, the camera is going to catch it and the audience is going to see it. What that thought is, that's a different story, because I've talked to actors who, have been in scenes where we interpret their thoughts to be one thing and they're thinking completely different, but
yes, exactly, yeah.
still comes across, and that's what works. So last question for you then. If you were able to speak to a younger version of your acting self right now, and to give one bit of advice, what would that be?
Oh, wow. I will tell you what Larry Moss, who I worked with for a long period of time, and did some, I loved being around him and knowing him, and coming to know him and getting to work with him, and some of the things that I got to work with him. And I was at a very difficult stage in my life, just filled with anxiety and dread, and just nothing was going right. And what he said to me is what I would say to my younger self, work very hard. And that's it, work very hard. And along the way, the addendum would be try to have some fun, because it is, when it's done well, it is fun. I mean, it's amazing, you know.
Thank you. That's very, very, very important piece of advice. I try to relay that to my son on a daily basis. I've learned that from my wife, that work ethic and being able to put yourself to something and continue doing it, until you get it. So yeah, it's great. Thank you for that. And thank you for coming on, and thank you for sharing. I really appreciate your time, and I know our audience appreciates it. We were able to learn quite a lot. It's wonderful to have you on.
And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. You've had an insightful conversation with William R. Moses. I have 15 more questions that I wanted to ask him, but I value his time, and he's about to go play the game that I love. Tennis is my game. So William, you're always welcome. If you're in Chicago, please come over, bring a racket. I have courts nearby.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so
Take you up.
thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. Take care.
Bye.